Welcome back to the college football week 2 betting locks and predictions, and let's get started with the recap of week 0 and 1. So week 0, pretty easy. We went 1-0 on the lock. It was Nevada plus 27.5, and they almost beat SMU outright. Preston Stone comes back in for SMU and leads them to a narrow victory, but the lock was not even a sweat all the way through. Montana State beats New Mexico in a close one there after a couple early turnovers. And Florida State against Georgia Tech, bad read on this one. Didn't have a betting lock on it, but Georgia Tech comes out to shock the Seminole. And then finally, Hawaii won in the nightcap there. So pretty entertaining week 0. Let's move on to the week 1 predictions. And a rough start with the Thursday night game. We had a Minnesota play that I gave out 2 weeks ago. Line completely flipped on us. Minnesota ends up losing after 2 very makeable field goals go wide. And we just get crushed on the number. Probably one of the worst locks all year. So I'll try and be better for this week. Then we had that North Dakota State-Colorado game, and Colorado does win in a close one there. And then TCU had some trouble with Stanford on the Friday night. That was very interesting in the true road environment. Stanford gets the cover there, but we did not have a play on that one. Georgia takes care of Clemson in Atlanta. Very impressive showing from Georgia there. And we have to see where Clemson will go in what looks to be a wide open ACC. Then Penn State at West Virginia. We get the best of the line movement. This one closes around 8, but can't get it done. West Virginia just was the worst team, and start to believe for Penn State folks, because they seem to have a dynamic rush and pass attack, and then yet to be seen on that defense, but generally a very reliable defense for them. They could be a contender in the Big Ten. And then a late ad lock. This is a reminder to follow the Discord. Click on it in the top right, because we give out more plays throughout the week as we get numbers. Here we were looking for the plus 14, but by game time we never saw the number. Had to take the 13.5. And Vanderbilt ends up winning outright against Virginia Tech, so a nice win there. Second page was not so nice to us, though. Oklahoma State SDSU game, I was keeping an eye on it. Oklahoma State does pull away, but it's going to be very interesting to see how Bowman plays the remainder of this year for this team. And just the experience O-line, Ollie Gordon, all of it. We'll see what happens. They have a tough game against an Arkansas team. We'll be talking about that one a little later. Then Miami at Florida, and this is also a contender for one of the worst locks of the year. Line didn't move away from us, really, but Florida was just not a good team in the swamp. This number had trended down from like 4 over the summer. We got 3.5 on the other video, but man, I really thought Florida would have at least kept it close. Instead, they get wiped out, and we really have to rethink both teams in this matchup. I think Florida's a lot worse than we thought. Miami could be a lot better than I personally thought. So we'll keep an eye on that there. Interesting to see what quarterback Florida rolls with moving forward, as well as the status of Napier going into that number 1 strength of schedule in the nation and a poor start at the Swamp. UNLV runs over Houston, and we had Houston winning that, so that's another game that we were not able to pick out right. And then Notre Dame, Texas A&M, this was just a horrendous performance by Connor Wegman. We get a decent number at the 2.5. It closed A&M -3, and you would not know it by how horrible and anemic this A&M offense was. Wegman was just not good at all. I think whoever they've got in that quarterback room has to be better. Behind him, we'll see what Elko does from here. The A&M defense looked pretty good. Riley Leonard did enough to win. It wasn't a very appealing game to watch, especially on the offensive end, but Notre Dame gets it done in about as tough of a road environment as you are going to see. And then another contender for bad lock of the year, Wyoming at Arizona State. And most of the stuff I just heard and done the work on for this Wyoming team just wasn't true. And they were horrible. And now we'll be looking at Arizona State in another spot against Mississippi State this week. Then, of course, the Florida State-Boston College game tomorrow. We will see what happens there. No play on that one as of right now. BYU at SMU to start off the week 2 slate, where we will have to get better on the betting locks. But let's start with a Friday night game. BYU at SMU. True road game, not in conference, of course. Big 12 ACC matchup, and I've got SMU winning this one, but worth keeping an eye on because SMU was a little bit closer than you would like against Nevada a couple weeks ago, so we'll see what happens. One of the few 2-0 teams in the country. And then Duke at Northwestern, and this one will not be a beauty to watch in any sense of the word. Northwestern gets the win against Miami, Ohio, but it was not great, and then Duke beat Elon, so I'm going to have Duke winning this one. I think they just have the better roster here. But we'll see if that Northwestern Lakeside field can provide some sort of environment and push Northwestern over the top. Then we have our first lock of the week. We are going to take Tulane plus 10.5 against K-State at home. K-State looked very good in their opener, but I'm going to take Tulane in this true home game spot. Again, when Tulane went to Kansas State last year, they got crunched. hoping they will remember that, even though there was a lot of roster turnover there and play close. Remember that Tulane played Ole Miss pretty close before a late pick six last year, so kind of just tailing that same pick. Then our second lock of the week, this is the contrarian play of the week. A lot of you guys probably won't agree with this, considering how Texas absolutely demolished Colorado State, while Michigan faced a Mountain West opponent of their own in Fresno State, and neither quarterback for them looked particularly good at all. They couldn't really get anything going until late in the game, but I trust this Michigan defense to keep it close, and this spread is above a touchdown now. It's 7 in some spots, and I think that by game time or later this week, it'll get to, 8, maybe 9. So I would just wait on this one. It is a betting lock, but don't take the number right now. Wait until a little later in the week. And the worst number I would take it at is 7 or 7.5. There are some 7s out there now, but I have a feeling it's going to go up to 8, maybe even 9 as people start to overreact and start betting into Texas in that environment there. And maybe we'll learn more about who will be starting for Michigan, although neither option seems to be that great. Our third betting lock of the week is going to be Penn State minus 31.5. Again, very impressed with their win against West Virginia. Not very impressed by this Bowling Green team. And James Franklin is one of those coaches that will just run up the score late. He'll run it in with, less than 2 minutes left to provide his backers a cover. I like that. And I like Penn State to roll Bowling Green here. It seemed that they had the dynamic offense with Katron Allen, Singleton, and then Drew Aller also slinging it against that WVU defense that just looked poor and got kind of shredded up there even before the rain delay. Then we have this Arkansas against Oklahoma State game, and this one is going to be very interesting to watch. Arkansas coming off the 70-0 blowout of Pine Bluff. Can't speak to how good that team was there, but Oklahoma State had a little bit closer of one against South Dakota State, and maybe that's prepared them. True home game spot for Oklahoma State, and because of that, I can't really go away from them. They're a pretty heavy favorite here. I think this one could go a variety of ways, and if Arkansas can win it, that would be a huge win for a Razorbacks program that has been in turmoil over the past couple of years. It would be a great win for them, but we'll see how that one goes. I'm very interested in watching it. Hopefully, these games aren't duds like last week. Before we get into the second page, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so you can get these early week locks into your inbox, because these numbers, as what happened last week for most of the games, minus that Minnesota game, we got the line movement. So if you want the best prices out there, then you're going to want to subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications. Only like 10% of you guys are. But without further ado, let's get into the second page. And we have Georgia Tech at Syracuse. Going to be an interesting one to watch. Kyle McCord and co at Syracuse looked pretty good against Ohio and put them away pretty easily. Georgia Tech looked a little less impressive against Georgia State, but already have the 2-0 record and the win against Florida State under their belt. With their second road game in 3 weeks, I think it will be Syracuse's turn. I think this will be a very competitive game. Syracuse is lying at 3-point underdogs. I could have a play coming later in the week on Syracuse. We will just have to see where that line moves. Same thing with this Pitt-Cincinnati game. Cincy looked horrible against Towson, and Pitt looked pretty good against a Kent State team that got lucky. Pitt is definitely the better team here, but there's a reason that Cincinnati is a slight favorite in this game. I think Pitt might regress to the mean a little bit here, and I like Cincy to win there. Then Kansas at Illinois, and I'm not calling for an outright win for Illinois, but I am calling for a betting lock here. Illinois, +6 or better. I would like to wait until +7 if money comes in on Kansas. We will see where this one goes, but keep an eye on this. I like Illinois to keep it close against a Kansas team that has been without a home this year, and we will see what happens. I've heard good things from this Illinois camp, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do against a ranked opponent here at home in what is a huge game for their program. Colorado at Nebraska, our fifth betting lock of the week, and I am taking Nebraska -6 and the hook there. I think a lot of hype around Colorado may have gotten drained out, but they did beat North Dakota State, which was always a fear that I had, that they might just be 0-1. Both of these teams get the win, and I think Nebraska is the much better team. We'll see if the Colorado hype train continues, but I like Nebraska to take care of business by at least a touchdown. We'll see how challenged their offense is, but it doesn't really matter. That Colorado defense in that North Dakota State game was just terrible. And I mean, I know this Nebraska defense is good at least. While the Colorado offense looked pretty good, the O-line was a little shaky, but also North Dakota State didn't look to have the best defense, for FBS standards. I like Nebraska and the Huskers, -6 in the hook there. Then Boise State, Oregon, always one to keep an eye on. Boise State earns a hard-fought and great victory at Georgia Southern in the true road environment, whereas Oregon kind of slithered around Idaho. They probably should have scored more points, got stopped on downs. This is major red flags for me, as I didn't go over that game earlier. And we'll see how dominant this Oregon front is. Boise State just can't play defense. As we saw, just Georgia Southern run all over them and pass. But Madsen and especially Janty, the running back, 6 touchdowns. He could be a force if this Oregon defense isn't as good as advertised. But it's mostly the O-line that I'm going to be looking at here. Can Oregon run the ball enough against Boise State? And it might not even be a good barometer because Boise State just doesn't seem to have their defensive front sorted out in any way either. Then we've got Tennessee against what I think might be an unranked NC State. A little too much playing with their food against Western Carolina. I like Tennessee to win this one easy. A betting lock could be coming on this game, depending on where this number moves around. If it goes down, I would favor Tennessee. If it goes up way too much, maybe NC State is the spot if we can get over 10 points. So we'll just have to see what happens there. Could go either way, but Tennessee looked very impressive in their opener, and NC State did not in any way possible. I expect the crowd to be 50-50, but chime in the comments if you think that it'll be dominated by one side or another. I'm not really too familiar with that North Carolina crowd over there. And then Virginia at Wake Forest, just another game to keep on your radar. Not too interesting there, but I saw that Wake Forest was only a slight favorite here, which indicates that Virginia has slightly the better team, so we'll keep an eye on that. Remember that Wake Forest does host contender Ole Miss at home, so this will maybe be a little bit of a dress rehearsal for that, even though Virginia is completely worse, and we will see if Wake Forest has any sort of horses whatsoever in their first conference game. Finally, Mississippi State at Arizona State nightcap for this second page, and I'm going to take Arizona State outright, and a betting lock could be coming on this game too. Just stay tuned in the Discord. Arizona State, very impressive, as already mentioned, against Wyoming. Mississippi State, we'll see what they have here. Didn't really have too much of a test week 1 against EKU, but we'll see what happens there. Mountain America Stadium should be rocking for that one. Then South Carolina, Kentucky, another betting lock. We're going to take Kentucky minus 9 in the hook there. South Carolina and Lenore Sellers just did not look the part at all, whereas Kentucky dominated in their first win. South Carolina was in a game with Old Dominion late in the 4th, and so we'll see what happens. Maybe Old Dominion's just a great team, but I expect Kentucky to win this one by more than 9.5 points. Maryland against Michigan State. Michigan State looked pretty pathetic against FAU. I like Maryland to win that one in their Big Ten opener there. And then we've got Texas Tech, Washington State. Get on this one quickly because the spread might move, but I'm going to take Washington State with the pick'em. It's a little bit of a square play, it seems like, because Texas Tech just almost got beat by Abilene Christian. Of course, Washington State, I don't expect them to be very good this year, but I think they can win this game in the true home environment. And honestly, if Texas Tech lost that game, I would favor them more in this matchup. But now, I mean, obviously, it's never good to go to overtime with an FCS team as a Power 4 team, but I think they may come off on the wrong foot there, and they really don't have any defense whatsoever. I think Washington State might even have a better defense than them, but we'll just see there. So I like the Cougs to get it done in Pullman there. Then Baylor at Utah, conference game, but actually not a conference game. I'll keep my eye on it, but I expect Utah to win very easily. Cam Rising, great opener, 5 touchdowns, I believe, and just looked great after the season off. Then Iowa State, Iowa in the Cy-Hawk rivalry. I like Iowa to win by 2.5 or more. Their offense was slow, got off to a slow start against the FCS opponent, but they eventually got there and got to 40 points, most points they've scored in a couple years there. Iowa State, I do respect them as a team. I just think this will be a tough environment, always charged here in this rivalry. Iowa did take it last year, so we'll see if Iowa State can respond. I don't think so, though. I like the Hawkeyes to win by 2.5 or more. And then finally, Cal at Auburn, an interesting out-of-conference ACC-SEC matchup here. Auburn's heavily favored, but Cal seems like one of these teams that could be a sleeper, but I really didn't like their first game against UC Davis. Took them a while, like well into the 3rd or 4th quarter to actually pull away there. So I like Auburn to get it done there. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to comment your predictions below. Where do you disagree? Where do you agree with me? And thank you for watching.